Good afternoon, everyone. I really want to thank you for taking this opportunity that we're presenting to you on behalf of Northlake and the Outreach Foundation for how you can help Ukrainian refugees. I know there's a lot vying for your attention, but the fact that you're here or watching really means a lot. I don't want to delay too much because I really want to have Mark come on up here. Reverend Dr. Mark is the executive director of the Outreach Foundation. Northlake and many other churches within this area partner with the Outreach Foundation. They are doing incredible things throughout the world, but they have been on the ground at the bordering countries, helping with the Ukrainian people who have been leaving, and we're going to be devoting the time today where Mark will share with you about many of those stories that are happening right now. And if you would like to contribute to those efforts, there is a basket in the back, and we will take that, and we will, all those proceeds raised today, if you'd like to contribute to that, go directly to the people and to those efforts. I'll let Mark explain that a little bit more. So without any further ado, now, yes, without any further ado, Reverend Mark Mueller.
Hope it doesn't work with me. Well, hey, thanks for taking time out on a Sunday afternoon. This is always a difficult time, I think, to do any kind of presentation because you're competing with what I usually do on Sunday afternoons, take a nap. And naps have a tendency to win. I don't know where I'm going to put that water. Thanks. I had a great time here this morning. I thought the worship services were absolutely fantastic to be a part of as I shared with you some of the global work of the church. And I didn't mention Ukraine, and people were saying, how come you didn't talk about Ukraine? It's because we're going to talk about Ukraine right here. So I'll have slides to kind of go through this, and I want you to know we'll have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So we'll do questions and answer, questions at 3:45-ish. But I'm also, you need to know, I love to engage people in conversation about mission work. So as we go along, if you got a question, raise your hand, and we'll try to kind of interact a little bit. That's the way I kind of roll. I was a teacher by trade to begin with before I got into the ministry, and I love teaching, and I love conversation as opposed to standing up listening to somebody lecture the whole time. So here we go. Let's start talking about some of these slides right away because they tell the story. On February 24th, you were all probably somewhere. I know you might even remember where you were when it was finally announced that Russia had invaded Ukraine. I was on the road to see my kids in Charlotte, and right away arrived at the hotel and engaged my staff with what we were going to do about it. The Outreach Foundation, is in, we're really approaching 45 countries with 60 global partners. And I've been on the board, then a development director, and then finally the executive director. And one of the things as a board member prior to all this, I thought is why aren't we engaged in Europe? The Outreach Foundation is, involved in Africa. We're involved in the Middle East. We've got some work in Cuba and now recently with the church in Mexico and its 6,000 churches. But why aren't we in Europe, I asked. Well, when I took over as the Outreach Foundation, one of the things I thought God was calling us to do was to get engaged in Europe. And this was before the Ukraine war. And I'm grateful we did. We have a colleague on staff, Dr. Tom Boone, that is responsible for this. Is one of his areas. But we obviously interact and talk all the time. So on February 24th, when the war started, being the Outreach Foundation, on February 25th, I talked with my staff, and on the night of February 25th, we launched our Ukraine appeal because we knew this was going to be horrific, and it has been every bit horrific. Since then, our Ukraine appeal has gone right out through the roof. I think the last 1.5 million has come in. We're a nimble organization. We can send it out. We've sent out over 1 million already into the field. I'll tell you why there's a little bit of difference between those two figures. Make sure you hold me to that question because it is something that tells about the future. So a lot of people are contributing. Outreach Foundation has individual donors individual churches and organizations that give to our cause. And right along Samaritan's Purses line, we're right there on the front lines of this stuff. We have developed and vetted some incredible partners that I'm going to share and talk with you about should you decide to give to the Ukraine appeal going forward. But you got to tell the story first. So I was over in, so we launched the appeal in February. In March, I was in England, and my colleague Tom said, why don't we go over to Poland and see what this is all about as we launch this appeal to see what we can do. And so we headed to Warsaw, Poland, and I'll show you some of this stuff on the map. And it was in Warsaw that this story unfolds. So here are some pictures that I usually start with the Ukraine appeal. The middle one represents what a train station looked like at that time. Here's the story on Ukraine. When the war started, people had to get out. Well, if you didn't have money for a bus ticket, and if you didn't own a car, which a lot of people don't, you had to hoof it. And we have plenty of stories of young families leaving and trying to walk out of Ukraine. There's one family that walked for 35 hours to arrive at the border to wait 25 more hours to board a train that was headed to Warsaw for about 5 hours. They got off the train and they know a soul. That's the experience. Now, right alongside that is all those people that didn't make that trip. Okay, the guys couldn't leave. If you're between 16 and 65, you have to stay and you have to fight. We've heard different numbers. It could be 18, it could be 64 as the cutoff, but generally speaking, if you're between the ages of 16 and 65, you were a gentleman, you'd be staying and you'd be fighting. That's what was happening. So who was leaving? The moms and the kids and the elderly. And can you imagine walking that distance? No. What happened? People died. Lots of people died walking out. So we know when we arrived in Warsaw, we had a doctor on our trip, and he was summoned right away down to the train station. And when I asked him what was the major thing that they were dealing with, it was dehydration. Because there weren't any water stations along the way. There's no McDonald's to pick up something to eat. Nothing. And can you imagine these small little kids, strollers with babies in them, and these people trying to get out of harm's way. And then seeing that madness at the train station. That's what it looked like as you headed out from some portion of Ukraine right on the border, headed to Warsaw. On the left, you see the tragic display of separation that isn't being told in this. Families are being separated. Dads, uncles, fathers, grandfathers are staying as, if you're fortunate enough, you get on the bus, put your hand up to the window, and you say goodbye. On the right-hand side, you see, again, another example of a family saying goodbye and leaving. It's horrible. And I wish I could give you a presentation here today that's going to just be, oh, wow, just like this morning, be encouraged. This just lays it on the line as to what's going on. No, I'm just going to put it up front for you. By the numbers, these are going to be, a little bit, I have to update them constantly. Ukraine generally, if you were to look at it as a country, is a country of about 40 million people, okay? 11 million, now it's up to 15 million, are refugees. 15 million people. Fathom that just for a little while. And if there's some kind of trend, maybe this is for your mission committee, for you as a church to consider, if there's some kind of trend coming forward, it is the huge number of refugees that are in existence in the world today. Upwards, Frontier Fellowship and I, we had another sister organization, Richard Haney, the executive director, and I were talking last week. It's upwards of 70 to 75 million people that are displaced. And all of that brings with it a unique set of problems. Now, when I was in Ukraine with our team, if you can imagine a city of about 1.2 million receiving 600,000 refugees. Okay, that's what they were faced with. 300,000 of those are children. A lot of them without parents. Mom and dad, or they just put them on the train and got them out of harm's way. And so Warsaw was, hey, what do we do with this? And so they responded. Now, I've seen a lot of those situations before where refugees come into a place and how people or the cities respond, or the nation or the country. In Lebanon, for instance, a country of 4 million, they received 2 million Syrian refugees. Well, that quickly became a very volatile situation because the new refugees were competing for homes, food, jobs, medical attention, and there's bad blood between Lebanese and Syrians. But what I didn't find that in Poland at all. I saw Polish people opening up their homes. If they had a spare bedroom, they took a refugee family. Ironically, when I was over in England, same announcement came over the national news that if you've got a spare bedroom for a Ukrainian refugee, please give us a call and we'll place them in your home. That is something that is unique and something that very special and something that a story that is not, I don't think, being told. So you can see the numbers about where they've gone. These numbers continue to increase, and they will continue to increase as long as the war goes on. So all of our partners on the ground say, this is not going away. It will begin to get better in terms of numbers once the war stops. But they still are getting mass number of refugees. Okay, if you're like me, sometimes you got to figure out where all this stuff is. I can't say that I could accurately discover where Ukraine is on the map. And so what I did is found some maps that might help you. The little dots are actually the major military centers for Russia and where they place their troops. You see Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania is going to play a huge role in what I'm going to talk to you about. You see Poland up there. These are major countries. And then Lithuania, do you see where it is? These are all going to be very important in this whole story. Okay? Well, I wanted to give you a little bit more detailed map of the different provinces in Poland. Please identify Kiev, kind of in the center upper portion. You see Kiev. I think a lot of us know a little bit about that. You also see Lviv way over to the left, and you see Warsaw in the upper part where I was. So when I was in Warsaw, I was 225 miles from the border. So people that were walking out of Ukraine, if they were walking toward Poland, would have boarded a train somewhere outside of Lviv on the border there in Poland, and then they took that train up to Warsaw. Okay, you see the journey. But everybody has gone everywhere, obviously. And then, again, paying particular attention to Lithuania, and because we're doing a lot of work in a lot of areas. And also on this map, you want to look at where Hungary is. Germany as well, but less so. Okay? And then, again, the map stuff, I'm almost done with that. You can see where Warsaw is, Lviv, Kiev. Okay. Now we can talk a little bit, before we get into some of the specific pictures, about our partners. These are all really cool people, cool partners. And I was talking to your mission committee a little while earlier over lunch. And when you take up a Ukraine appeal, for instance, you can tell us at the Outreach Foundation where you want your money to go, because maybe a partner here is doing work that you really consider to be important to you. So you can designate it without a heartbeat. Okay, so we are working with the Catholic Church in Ukraine, specifically Father Olek and his wife. Yes, if you're a Catholic priest in the Catholic Church of Ukraine, you can marry and have children, and Father Oleg does. Okay? So we work with them. He was in Lviv, then moved to Kiev, then actually headed out for a little while and then went back in. So he's been phenomenal. We also work with the City Church, 3 locations in Vilnius, Lithuania. Pastor Saul, you'll see a picture of him. He will actually be in the United States, and he may actually be at the Outreach Foundation board meeting. I don't know that yet, but we're working on those details. We also work with the College of Theology and Science, part of the seminary in Warsaw that trains Reformed pastors, along with other types of pastors. And again, I'll tell you the story behind each of these in just a minute. We are working now, just signed an agreement with Mission Eurasia. They're based in Franklin, Tennessee. Who knew? But they're right in our backyards. We have our backyard. We have a couple other partners I want to talk about. They're not up here because the slide gets too long now because this thing is just beginning to broaden. We just signed an agreement with the World Communion of Reformed Churches. They are actually based in, they're connected with the Ukraine Evangelical Theological Seminary, a seminary that you can actually work with. As these people, what they have done in most situations, as they've taken their building and they've modified it to house refugees. It would be like taking your building here and taking a Sunday school room or just a room and allowing a refugee family to occupy it. That's what these folks have done, almost to a T. We are also working with a Ukrainian Greek Catholic church in Romania, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on as well. Okay? So those are vetted partners. Outstanding work. We've sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to them. Being the small and unique organization that we are, we wire transfer funds to secure locations every Thursday. We can get it out there, and we can get it out there fast. Well, there's Father Oleg, a guy in the blue striped shirt, and his beautiful family there, and his wife, Lena, and that's some of their extended family, but that's what he looks like. This is some of his church members that once this Ukrainian stuff started happening in the war, he mobilized some of his team members to gather and to begin to put this refugee situation in hand. This hit, let me see if this, that's one of his sons. His son is actually in Ukraine fighting right now. He couldn't leave. That's his other son. He's in the Ukraine war as well. Now you're going to get into some of these pictures that you're going to see, and you've seen them on the news. This is nothing new. The Outreach Foundation was all over the news with this stuff. With Channel 5 News, the CBS affiliate in Nashville interviewed me on 4 different occasions, one from Poland, as they got this message out. Some of it was picked up by national news, as we seem to be on the front edge of what people were doing. This is just an example of what Kiev was looking like. And you know what we often forget in this kind of thing is the toll that it takes upon the elderly. You know, what do you do with your elderly mother as you try to get her or get your elderly father out of harm's way in a city that's just been bombed incessantly by Russian rockets? And, you know, I put this one up there simply because, you know, you forget the toll on the pets. You know, I have a black lab at home. Zoe goes everywhere I go when I'm around. But here you've got, look at the damage in the back. You know, it's incredible. We obviously haven't been able to get into Ukraine. Our insurance company, as I told some of you, will not allow us to go into Ukraine. We continue to battle with them, although they did release some information. This is a little bit humorous the other day. That there is a part of our policy, we have 6 policies that help us as we travel. We did find out that one portion of our policy does permit the remains of an executive director to be returned to the United States. So we're covered. I don't know why that is. You have to ask an insurance company. But my remains will come home, and any director level, so that Tom Boone, I told him he was safe too. This is the crazy kind of stuff. And you know, the separation that goes along with this is just phenomenal. This is a story that's hard to, when you get on a train, you can't put your baby carriage on there if you're a young mom. They don't permit that. And so and we saw a lot. You'll see some pictures here in the future. You'll see some stuff that just blows your mind away of these moms. And I mean, they're just starting their families. They've got 3 little kids under the age of 6, and you've got one of them in a stroller, and you take them up there to the train, and they say, no, the stroller doesn't go. So you have thousands of these strollers next to train stations that are just sitting idly by. The human cost of this whole situation. This is actually on the night that the bombings started. People fled to the subways, and they stayed there. And they stayed there for days. There was nowhere else to go. They bring everything they possibly can, shells throughout the night. What we have found, everybody's obviously fleeing for their life, thankful that they're down below. But what we don't, or we kind of miss, is the trauma that one walks out with. I was playing foosball with one of the Ukrainian refugees, an 8-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl. And the mother brought the boy out to play foosball with me, and he was shaking. And they asked him why he was shaking. It's because all he does now is wake up and he hears the bombing. We have all of that to deal with. The emotional trauma, the trauma healing that needs to be done. If I were to think about what most people tell me is needed in the camps, is trauma healing. PTSD in a big way. Let me stop there for a second. Maybe we can knock out a few questions if you've got any. I'm not saying you've got questions, but if you've got a question or two, holler, and then we don't have to wait until the very end to try to, not saying that there's going to be a lot of questions, but there could be if I play this out the way it has been in the past. I've done this presentation around the United States a few times, and we always run out of time.
I just want to know, how is the mechanics of distributing the food? So people are dumped into this area like outside the train station. Do they go somewhere and get the food? Is the food brought to them? How is it packaged? How is it refrigerated? How does money we might give go to help that process?
Right. Each of these partners that you've seen up here, along with a few others, receive direct wire transfers of money from us to go out and buy the food. Now, they know where they can get it. So in Lviv, you know where in Lviv you can go and get the food. They need the money to go do it. Or they know where to get the medical supplies. The people don't go get it. The relief agency does. They organize the whole thing. So, if I were to think about the College of Theology and Science, they're housing 40 refugee families in their seminary right now. They have a person on staff that is simply responsible for getting food and cooking meals. We ate with them, to give you an idea. It's kind of, I think, around here you have a beautiful kitchen. I think I've seen it. I haven't seen it this time around. But they have somebody in the kitchen cooking. They have another person that's running people to the doctor. That's how they've worked it out. They have another person dealing with the pregnant women that are there. Other people taking them to some of the psychological aspects of war. They've got people in town they take them to. Dentists. You got all that normal stuff that you and I have. They still have, but they've got people on staff. I think a lot of them are volunteers, to be honest with you, that have responded to this situation and help. Does that answer that? Great. And that was, how do they coordinate all the food if you didn't hear it? Okay, anything else? Sir? I would never put us side by side because they are everywhere. We are, I've got 10 people in the Franklin office. I've got 6 consultants, a couple other colleagues that would be associate directors, and about 20 mission personnel around the globe. But no, Samaritan's Purse, they're thousands of people like that. So comparison-wise, we don't compare. But in terms of work that we do, we're side by side. Well, yeah, they can do things in a much bigger way than we do. We do coordinate stuff that we're doing together. None of this stuff is us against them. It's we. Has to be. I can't imagine doing that, but I'm sure it exists. Any others before I go on? Okay, well, one there, right there. Okay. This will be the last one, and then I'll keep going.
You mentioned refugees. What's the status of refugees from the war in Ukraine here in America, or in North or South or Central America?
Okay, I want to be careful when I say this because I really don't want to get into any hint one way or the other about me being opposed to our government or for our government, okay? But as a United States, we have a limit on the number of refugees that we're going to take into our country. Let's say that number. I think it's around 100,000. The Biden administration said, yes, we'll take some refugees from Ukraine, but we're going to decrease the number of other refugees that we take into this country. So we're going to hold at that 100,000 number. Okay? That's the reality of it. We are, you have countries around the globe that open, the country of Spain flew a 747 into Warsaw, loaded it up with undocumented people from Ukraine, and flew it back to Spain and kept every one of them. I mean, that's a lot of people all at once. Canada, same thing, flying them in and out. England, Germany, Lithuania, Romania, they are pulling these refugees in. You're not finding that situation so prevalent in the United States. Okay, I got one family that I'm aware of in Nashville. One family. So, I mean, I'm not saying they aren't here, but a lot of times it has to do if you have a relative that lives in the United States, you might be able to get a visa to go. But it's not, there's not many here. Does that answer that? From Ukraine. Okay. All right. Let's go on. And I just, as a pastor, as someone that cares about these situations, I understand the immigration issue. I do. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Everybody. But this is a humanitarian crisis like we haven't seen in a long time. And I'm hoping that we'll respond in an even more profound way, to lead the way as America usually does. It's just a team. I'm going to jump over this one. A team in Ukraine. This is, are they going to play this? Oh, this is priceless. I couldn't play this before. Oh, no. This might be painful to hear. A bunch of guys singing. They're missing their wives. This is the first time I've been able to get it to play. I'll go on, but I got to explain that one. It's a National Women's Day. It's like Mother's Day over there. And the guys are separated from the gals, obviously, right? And they missed them. And so they sent them greetings via a video. And so that's what that was. These represent the children on the wall. These all children have passed away. The human toll is staggering. This represents if you're in Warsaw and you were to go to a big multi-purpose room, convention center, this is what it looks like. just cot after cot after cot after cot of people just finding a place to sleep. They hadn't slept for days, but yet they don't have anywhere to go to. Naturally, you've got your food thing just like you'd do out here. You know, you'd have a food station for everybody because you got to feed everybody. You'd have a clothing station. They couldn't pack a suitcase to go. You couldn't even take them on the trains. You had the clothes on your back. Weren't even permitted to have a backpack that we're aware of. You simply walked your body on the train and took off and got out of there. These are actually then, now you're beginning to see the faces of refugees. All of us think, gosh, how horrible, you know, or what do they look like? There you go. Those faces of the Ukrainian refugees. This hit national news. I didn't know what this picture meant when we were there. It was sent to us, and it was on the right only. And then I talked to a gal in Nashville. I said, I don't know what this means. I texted her the picture, and she sent back a reply saying, oh, no. And here's the interpretation, which is difficult to get through. The sign read, here's what they look like now. Ivan met, born December 4th, 2009, and Maria met, his mother. And they were buried alongside, I think, one of the train stations. They had perished from dehydration, lack of food. The death date was a little bit hard to determine, but that's, what's happening. This breaks your heart. But again, organizations have responded. This is actually a food truck that's going into Lviv and then also Kiev. What you are also, I don't know if you're going to actually see a picture of it, we work with an organization called Crew in Romania, and we are able to purchase for $20,000 a van load of medical supplies that are driven from Romania up into Kiev and Lviv. The number one medical item that they want are bandages that cause the blood to coagulate. If I've got any nurses in that area, but there are certain bandages you put on that cause the blood to coagulate right away. This is an example of, again, food distribution and what people are looking like. This is Father Oleg's church. I don't know if it's still standing now. Other pictures, supplies coming in, being offloaded on the truck. Bread line. Those of you that are familiar with this from maybe other wars, these people are just waiting to get in line to eat. One thing we've started to do recently, I was mentioning that van load of supplies going out of Romania. We are now, with the help of some container companies, shipping big containers into Romania and using them as shelters for people to sleep in and live in the meantime. We're also working with Mission Eurasia to provide the same people with food. And so for the cost of, $50, Mission Eurasia says that they can feed a family of 4 for a week. So, so these are, again, partners that may become a little bit more familiar with you. Father Oleg and his ministry, Mission Eurasia, the School of Science and Theology, City Church in Lithuania, Crew. All of these are just really top-notch people doing top-notch work, and we can certainly verify their work. And then the shelters of course, I mentioned the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church and their partnership there. I'll mention one more in just a minute, but I just want to keep going. The whole goal of refugee work right now is to get people out of these areas that people are coming into Warsaw, 600,000 people. They're trying to get people out of there, move them out, because they're receiving more people as they do. So people are being sent everywhere imaginable. Throughout, obviously, you've heard throughout other regions of Poland, Romania, Hungary, and that kind of thing. And then there's stories of families that actually arrived at a home in Lithuania after a 48-hour trip, and they'll stay there. The city the city church in Lithuania, what they've done in their 3 different locations in Vilnius is they've actually rented out a building next to the church, created a hotel for 50 families, and are having the Ukrainians run the hotel. They can earn some income, some money, takes care of 50 families, and it's that kind of stuff. So we send, obviously, money over for that kind of stuff all the way. Okay. These are backpacks, and they're filled with medical supplies for people, because, you know, as you listen to the news, there isn't really a place in Ukraine that is safe from rocket attack, and medical supplies are needed wherever people go. Yes, I mentioned Pastor Saul, okay? This is Pastor Saul. Great guy. He's been in my house because I knew him before all this stuff happened. A dynamic leader. He leads City Church, has 3 worship services at his center location in Vilnius, and really is now engaged in mission work with this Ukrainian crisis. And I don't know if you've ever seen a church that has gone through that kind of experience. I've seen a lot of it in the Middle East. If you were to go into his church right now, this room would be partitioned off. It would have a series of 4 or 5 long ropes from end to end with curtains or blankets held up, and each square would be the location for a family to live. You'd have easily 50 families living in this fellowship hall. That's what it's like in Syria and Lebanon. I've seen it. And every room in this place filled with the refugee family. You'd have a center place for people to come and take a shower. You'd have a center place for people to come and eat. You'd have a center place for people to maybe come and play if they could. But that's what refugee work is like, and Saul's right in the middle of it. That's him up close with his scary kind of hair. Ironically, he's done such good work. He and 16 other pastors from Ukraine were invited by Pope Francis to come to the Vatican, and the Pope prayed for them. He's being noticed on a national stage. This is what they've done to some of their rooms. This used to be just a vacant room in his church, and they put 2 beds in it, and now it houses a couple of people that are looking for a place to stay. Before I get into this, let's talk. Other questions that might be coming to the surface right now. It's about 20 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, you talked about signing contracts with other organizations. What kind of terms are involved in these contracts?
Say some more contracts. Let me hear some more about that question. I want to make sure I understand it. I mean, contracts with other organizations, you like Samaritan's Purse, or what are you talking about?
Yes, I mean, you are the one that used the term signing contracts with other.
You mean some of these
institutions.
partners?
Yes.
Yeah. It's an agreement. You know, all of our relationships at the Outreach Foundation are based upon trust and honesty. But we like to clearly lay out what the expectations are for the use of the funds so that we can tell our donors that, yes, this is what it's going for. So they signed an agreement with us, memorandum of understanding, saying this is how we're going to send you this amount of money, and this is how it's going to be spent. Because we owe our partners the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that their funds are spent in the way that they intended. Now, we don't really worry about anybody up here. I mean, every partner that we've got, if we've got concerns, we drop them. Okay? That's one thing we hold very highly is trust and our relationship with each other. Others?
I'm involved with Rotary. Rotary supposedly over there working too? Have you heard much about what Rotary is doing?
I haven't heard that Rotary's over there. I'm not saying they're not. It's a very delicate situation to be in because, again, you're at risk of loss of life, and your organization is put out front there as possibly taking some risks that could lead you liable legally. But I'm not saying that they're not there. I'm just saying I haven't heard that they are. Ma'am.
Is there a system where American churches could sponsor the refugees?
Say that again so they can hear.
Is there a system where American churches could sponsor the refugee families?
Absolutely. Absolutely, but you need to know that the number of refugee families coming into the United States, if you're talking about in the States, that's going to be limited. But if you're wanting to sponsor a family over there, absolutely, I can give you some figures right now. Well, I mean, that one for, if you choose to work with Mission Eurasia, for $50 for a week, I think it's a week. Yeah, for a week, you'll feed a family of 4. So a $200 donation is going to feed them for a month. We know that. Mission Eurasia and Sergey, who's the executive director, and I have met on several occasions. That's the number, and he can do that.
But if a church says responsible or support, if a church stands for the family and says, we will help this family, could that overcome the lack of refugees that are coming in? Could each church support?
Absolutely, yeah. You can do it 1,000 different ways, but you bet you could take a family, you could take several families, whatever, ever number of families. You can send me the money, and I'll send it to them, and we'll take care of the family over there. Because see, here's the thing that we're working on. Yep.
I think the question is, can American churches or organizations help overcome the block or limit that seems to be set by the government? If we were to all stand up and say we want to bring in, is there a way for that to happen? I think that's the intent of the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's going to take work, with your government, with your elected officials. They're going to need to hear from you. Yeah, I don't hold that. I don't hold those rules in my hands. I have to abide by them. So, if you're wanting, we've seen some churches do this in the D.C. area, say that we're wanting to take in refugee families and to care for them from Ukraine. Help us make this happen. And you can get some people working for you, and that can happen. They've been able to do that in some cases in Washington. I think it would be refreshing to hear from other parts of the United States in that same way. Did that answer that? Okay. And there's a few things that are just important to keep in mind in this whole thing. One of the key things is dads and brothers and uncles fighting in Ukraine. What do you think the families want to do that have left? They want to go back. They can't wait to go back. Now, remember, in other parts of the world, and I'll share with you, that's what that next screen is, other parts of the world, that hasn't happened. The guys haven't had to stay back and fight. So when you cut the families apart, the family wants to reunite, even if it's not in a good situation. So the women and the children right now want to get back to their family, and they'll take whatever they get when they get back, as long as they're together. So I don't know how long this situation is going to last where you see this mass exodus. I think as long as there's continued missile attacks by Russia, which continue even today, that there's a tendency for families to say it's not safe, we can't endure the rockets, that's why we left. But if that stops, you're going to see a bunch of people going back. The problem is, they don't have anything to go back to. So they're going to have to learn how to survive and how to live in a harsh environment. It gets pretty cold. That's one key takeaway. Second key takeaway is what our partners are telling us about the region. They're concerned. Lithuania people are on edge. They think they will be invaded by Russia. To a T. They say Putin's not stopping. And it's pretty hopeful for you to think it's going to be different. Moldova, they don't think they'll be around much longer. All of those countries are on edge. They know the Russians and how they operate, what they say and what they do. And this has all the makings of something that is going to get worse before it gets better. So if that's the case, then what would our response be? What are you and I being called to do as followers of Christ in that midst? And there could be 1,000 different answers to that. But we need to face what we're facing. And this could get worse. And what does that mean? Okay. Well, again, what I tried to point out this morning, too, is you are seeing some things happen in the world that are, it just seems to be overwhelming, certainly. But people are trying to get out of harm's way, and they're trying to seek a life, ironically, that just provides shelter and food and a safe environment. I bring this map up to you today because, and this is outside of Ukraine, but it's the same thing is happening in Ukraine, that you have this mass exodus of people. And up, you see Tapachula, this is Mexico now, obviously, right along the border with Guatemala. And that's the site of a new church development that we've funded because refugees are flooding into that area. And the church has responded by saying, okay, you're here, there are jobs here, there's a possible place for you to stay, let's plant a church here. And the refugees stay. Ironically, these refugees are not just from Guatemala and Nicaragua, a lot of them are from Haiti. Haiti and Chile have a reciprocal arrangement where you can go from Haiti into Chile, and then they're walking from Chile up to Tapachula. Okay? The incredible distance that people are traveling to get out of harm's way is just staggering. And the same thing happened in Ukraine. Hundreds and hundreds of miles. Same thing happened, I mentioned in the sermon today, in Iran. People walked or boated or traveled in some way 2,000 miles out of Iran to arrive at the doorstep of England, hoping to seek asylum. And in England, you'll wait 2 years for your case to be heard. My gosh. But it's that world that we're living in. Now, as Christians, listen, we can go ahead and we can just pretend this doesn't exist. We can. Or we can say, uh-oh, what's going on in the world? And what is God calling me to do about it? Okay. You know, again, this relates to Ukraine as well and Pakistan, the results of the war in Afghanistan, all the problems. Do you know you've got 3 million refugees in northern Pakistan, all from Afghanistan, living out in the middle of the desert? What is God saying to us? What is the message here? Same thing here in Iraq, just back from Iraq, up in the upper, we just rededicated a church in Mosul, Iraq. It was destroyed by ISIS. We just rebuilt it. But up, you see Erbil, and then if you were to go a little bit further, you would see this. These are Yazidis. Remember the Yazidis? Yazidis were systematically destroyed by ISIS because of their belief, because of their beliefs. They're kind of semi-Christian, kind of not, but they were systematically wiped out. This is some food distribution at one of the refugee camps. This is a picture of another side of it. 25,000 people living in each camp, 3 camps, 25,000 in each camp, living at the same latitude as Indianapolis. So imagine living in a plastic tent year-round for 20 years. Infant mortality rate is off the charts. So what the kids look like up front is they get their naan or their bread for the day, get a little blue coupon from the UN, they go pick it up, and that's how they live. They don't get any meat, no fresh vegetables. You live with naan. It's good naan, but and then last one, I think this last slide is again another example of the refugee situation which we're facing in Ukraine, right along the border there. I think you see Beirut on the left, and where it comes in contact with Syria and where Damascus is. I was in Damascus not too long ago. 10 refugee camps, 6,000 in each camp. Living there for 13 years now. So I don't know. I don't oftentimes hear this, or I didn't when I was younger. And certainly the congregations that I talk to around the United States haven't heard it. But this seems to be a different day. And it can be a very discouraging message, hence why I preached about encouragement. Don't be discouraged here. God's just reworking things, and we have to go about ministry in a different way. Other questions? We're about at our hard stop. Any other questions? What's one question do you think I oftentimes get when I do this presentation? What's the question that always everybody asks? What do we do? What do we do? It is overwhelming, isn't it? And it can leave you depressed, looking down at the sidewalk or the carpet, saying, I just don't know what to do. How do you respond to that? Linda? Do what you can. That's an answer. Pray. Send funds. Absolutely. Yeah, it becomes a part of our call that God has placed us in this position, that we are living in and a part of. Presbyterian denomination is either usually number one or number two, is the most wealthiest denomination in the world. In the most affluent, the wealthiest country that's ever been on the face of the earth, these United States. And what do we do with the tremendous amount of need around us? That's the question before us. And I don't think that God expects us to solve the answer, each of us individually. But God calls us to be a part of the solution. So I'm grateful for your attendance. I'm out of time. Where you go from here, I think you just continue to be. We'll update you as we get these updates. Again, I was there in March. We just had a team come back in June. You can come on up, Sean. And then we've got another one going in November, if you so choose to be a part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all of the partners that you saw, we were in Lithuania, we were in Warsaw, we were in Romania, and we visit. Each of these partners are the people that take care of us when we go. We go specifically to them. And this time, like I was saying, we're trying to get into Ukraine, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Oh, you want to come, you can join us, absolutely. We take people from all over the United States, pastors, elders, regular mission folks, just you want to come and see and come and do. Absolutely. Anything else? Sir?
What is the presence of Americans over there mean? And I ask is because in South America, Americans have the virtue to be protected. People don't want to kill an American. So when you put an American in a part of the world, often it comes with a sense of protection. The Presbyterian Church has a company program in Colombia, for example, where they drop an American in the middle of a conflict area, and obviously the American is in danger, but for whatever reason, we can assume there is a sense of protection. When you are present in places like that, do you see the difference of behavior? You cannot do anything about a torpedo coming your way or a missile, but do you see the difference when you are there?
The big takeaway in going over there, the people feel so encouraged when we show up, okay, that we would actually take time to go over there and show up means volumes. Because we're there, I don't think the people, they treat us with, I've been treated in an incredibly great way by being there. I can't say that we would be totally safe, though, but we rely upon our partners to keep us safe. So being an American over there doesn't mean it parts the waters, and they hold us in such high esteem that they don't do any of this crazy stuff. They do the crazy stuff, and sometimes we're the target. That's been my experience as well. A couple quick little stories. I was on the roof of a church in Iraq taking a picture of the beautiful city of Kirkuk until our partners said, "What are you doing up here?" Because of sniper fire. They'll pick off an American like that. It's those kind of stories. So, I think the global church has a lot to teach us. The global church is teaching me how much we are interconnected and how much we need each other at this vulnerable time. They also teach me resiliency and faith. In Pakistan, just like you guys today have 7 officers at this church that kind of protect you. In Pakistan, same experience. They're all carrying AK-47s, but they've got the fire truck and the ambulance outside to boot. It's that dangerous to be a Christian in Pakistan. And it's dangerous to be a Christian in Ukraine as well, with what they see is coming. I think that just becomes incumbent upon us to say, what do I going to deal with that? The one thing I resolved in my own life is I am not going to let fear determine my direction in life. Fear will not have the final answer. I will not do something because if I'm going to be fearful about things, it's over with. I'm not going to live that way. So, any others? We got to go. Yep. Already over.
I want to thank Mark and the Outreach Foundation for being here today, for sharing with us. And if you'd like to get in touch with Mark, he'll be around for a little bit afterwards if you want to talk to him personally. But this is part of our commitment here at Northlake, is that we are seeking other partners that want to make an impact in the kingdom of God here, right now, locally, but also globally, because we are one church, one baptism, one faith in Christ. We have brothers and sisters everywhere, and we want to partner with anybody who wants to do that. So it doesn't matter whether you're Presbyterian or not. I appreciate those of you who have come from other congregations or just from the community. Thank you so much. But if you want to make a difference, we want to partner with you. We want to partner with Outreach. Thank you again, Mark, and God bless you all. Thank you for coming.